Okay, let's jump right into this. Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to unpack something that might honestly turn your daily workflow completely upside down. I want you to think about the last time you sat through a presentation in one of those dimly lit conference rooms. You know the exact one I'm talking about. The endless parade of flashy transitions, the spinning 3D pie charts, and those perfectly aligned bullet points that someone definitely spent 3 hours formatting instead of, actually researching the topic. Well, what if I told you that those pretty presentations you and your team rely on every single day are actually masking incredibly weak logic? Today, we're tearing down the whole illusion of the modern presentation. We are looking at the gritty reality behind corporate communication, and we're going to explore exactly why one of the most successful companies in human history decided to just completely kill off the slideshow.
Slides equal lies. Look, I know it sounds harsh, right? But let's be real about what's actually happening in corporate meeting rooms across the globe every single day. Traditional slide decks have kind of become this massive psychological crutch. They basically allow people to stand up, nervously click a remote, and hide behind carefully curated icons and vague bullet points. Instead of presenting real, unfiltered substance, presenters are just offering up this superficial shell. And here's the thing, the slide deck creates a seriously dangerous illusion of competence. If the formatting looks professional, if the fonts match perfectly, if the margins are totally clean, we just instinctively assume the underlying idea is solid. But as our sources reveal, more often than not, those highly polished designs are just masking a fundamental lack of deep critical understanding. The presenter essentially becomes a performer, and the actual real work gets completely lost in the performance.
So, Jeff Bezos had this incredibly simple yet deeply disruptive mandate for his team: stop making pretty slides. He recognized super early on that when you allow people to lean on visual aids, you are openly inviting lazy thinking right into your organization. You're letting people off the hook. He wanted to totally strip away that superficial layer of design. So he made this radical move that honestly shocked the corporate world at the time. He completely banned PowerPoint across Amazon. No more bullet points, no more spinning graphics, no presentation software of any kind, period. He wanted to force a culture where ideas had to stand entirely on their own merit, just stripped bare, without the safety net of a slick, distracting design. Now, to truly get where this intense, zero-tolerance policy for fluff comes from, we got a flashback. We need to go all the way back to 1994. This is way before the massive headquarters in Seattle. This is before the endless global network of prime delivery vans, and long before Jeff Bezos was recognized as this billionaire tech titan. Back in 1994, he was literally just a guy with an unproven idea operating in a super gritty, unglamorous reality. And it's right here, in this messy, scrappy, highly constrained environment, that the actual foundation for his logic over everything philosophy was forged. There is this massive, almost unbelievable contrast between the modern image we have of the visionary leading a tech empire and the 1994 reality of a guy driving a beaten-up 90s Chevy Blazer. I mean, it was a junk car. He didn't have unlimited venture capital just pouring into his lap, and he certainly didn't have a whole team of graphic designers making his pitch decks look flawless. The origins of Amazon weren't built in some sleek boardroom with an expensive projector. They were built by a man in a junk car who had absolutely nothing to rely on except his own relentless drive and the rock-solid logic of his business model. Because when you have zero resources, the only currency you actually have is the quality of your thought. This whole early era was defined entirely by pure grind. Just picture this visceral image for a second. In those early days, Bezos didn't even have a desk to work at. He was literally packing the very first Amazon orders on his hands and knees on the hard floor. Think about that. The founder of what would eventually become a trillion-dollar powerhouse is packing cardboard boxes on the floor because he literally couldn't afford a proper workspace for himself or his tiny team. It's a pretty powerful image, and it is the exact polar opposite of corporate polish. It is raw, unglamorous, highly taxing execution.
And that time on the floor instilled a foundational lesson that would shape his entire worldview. No pretty packaging. This early hustle proved to Bezos that success does absolutely not come from a fancy office, and it definitely doesn't come from dressing things up to look appealing to investors or middle management. It comes strictly from the function. When you're taping up boxes on your knees and your back is aching, you quickly realize that the only thing the customer actually cares about is getting the product out the door and into their hands. The function is everything. The form? Entirely irrelevant. This mindset that the core truth and utility of the work is infinitely more important than the aesthetics of how it's presented became permanently hardwired into his brain.
So, as Amazon absolutely exploded from a scrappy, floor-bound startup into a corporate juggernaut, that foundational grit didn't just disappear. It evolved. It actually scaled up into a company-wide operational standard. Bezos looked closely at how traditional corporate America operated, and he saw that as companies grew, they naturally, almost inevitably, gravitated towards prioritizing the appearance of work over actual work. They gravitated towards slides. They literally hired managers just to present to other managers. Recognizing this fatal flaw, he mandated a total, permanent ban on presentation software across the entire company. No exceptions.
So, you might be wondering, if you completely ban slides in a massive corporation, what do you demand in their place? The answer is raw, undeniable logic. He wasn't looking for an entertaining performance. He demanded unfiltered, crystal-clear understanding, entirely devoid of any visual fluff. Imagine looking so closely at an idea that it's like looking directly into someone's mind and seeing the raw code of their thought process reflected back at you. That's what this level of clarity requires. It's the naked truth of a business proposition, stripped of any visual manipulation that might make a fundamentally bad idea look passable to a room full of tired executives.
To enforce this intense demand for clarity, Bezos brought in a highly specific and rigorous solution based entirely around the number 6. He replaced the banned slideshows with the now famous 6-page narrative memo. From that point forward, every single new product idea, every major strategic proposal, every significant decision required a tightly written, dense 6-page document. No bullet points to hide behind, no charts to distract the eye. Just 6 pages of fully formed sentences, structured paragraphs, and solid, undeniable text.
Let's actually break down exactly how demanding this framework really is in practice, because it fundamentally changes the entire dynamic of a meeting. Step 1, you have to sit down and write those 6 pages, which can honestly take weeks of drafting and refining. Step 2, you present this pure logic to the room, but get this, not by speaking. The meeting starts with everyone, including the highest-ranking executives, sitting in dead silence for 20 to 30 minutes, simply reading the memo. Just imagine the sheer tension of sitting in a quiet room while your peers scrutinize your exact thought process line by line. It completely neutralizes the charismatic presenter who usually glides by on charm, and it elevates the quiet, brilliant thinker. And step 3, this is where the true intensity shines through. If that document wasn't logically sound, if the thought process was exposed as flawed right there on the page, the meeting was canceled on the spot. Dead. Everyone gets their time back. There was absolutely no talking your way out of a poorly reasoned idea. The core reasoning behind this brutal system basically boils down to this single, undeniable principle. If you couldn't write it down clearly, you didn't understand it. When you're forced to write out your thoughts in full sentences and structured paragraphs, your brain is forced to actually connect the dots. You can't just skip over a massive flaw in your reasoning like you effortlessly can when you hit a button to transition between 2 slides. Writing forces a level of cognitive rigor that bullet points simply cannot and will not ever achieve. Writing isn't just a way to share your thinking. Writing is the act of thinking itself. If there is a hole in your logic, trust me, the written word will expose it immediately. Ultimately, this is the choice every single professional has to make about how they spend their time. On one side, we have the undeniable substance of a 6-page, fully written narrative. It requires deep thought, painstaking effort, and genuine vulnerability to put your unvarnished ideas down on paper. On the other side, we have the hollow nature of relying on visuals to do the heavy lifting for your brain. It really represents the profound shift from merely performing the appearance of work to actually engaging in deep, meaningful productivity. So, as we pull all these threads together, what are the fundamental truths we've actually learned from that guy in the beat-up Chevy Blazer who went on to change global commerce? Well, first, we have to realize that there is simply no hiding behind charts. Superficial design eventually fails. Second, you absolutely must prioritize clarity of thought and unfiltered substance over presentation. The idea has to survive on its own merit. And finally, the ultimate takeaway, from packing cardboard boxes on a hard floor to demanding silent reading rooms for 6-page memos, is that execution is king. Success literally does not care one bit about your pretty slides. It only cares about your execution. Which leaves us with a vital and maybe somewhat uncomfortable question to ask ourselves today. Are you working on your logic, or are you just working on your slides? Take a hard, honest look at your own daily habits in the meetings you run. Are you relying on pretty packaging to get by, or are you doing the deep, difficult work of thinking clearly? It might be time to stop making pretty slides, step away from the formatting tools, and start executing on the ideas that actually matter. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you in the next one.